The spoon!
You're listening to The Spoon.
The year was 1977. Mick Jones is in New York City forming the band that would ultimately become Foreigner. He auditions Lou Gramm, who hopefully everybody recognized, that awesome Lou Gramm.
Sure, he was Mary Tyler Moore's boss. Yeah, sure.
There you go, Lou Gramm, that's right. So at any rate, Mick had 3 demos for Lou to audition with. One was Feels Like the First Time, everybody knows that. One was At War with the World, which also made it onto the debut Foreigner album. But this other thing here, Take Me to Your Leader, they just never worked on it. It appeared in 2002 as a bonus track on a reissue. And since this is the greatest song you never heard, I figured it might not be the greatest song, but you've probably never heard it. Interestingly, they did not have their permanent drummer yet. They had a black drummer they were working with who apparently wanted to put a disco beat on everything. Because it was 1977. So when you hear all that atypical hi-hat work there, that you don't usually hear with Foreigner. So when I came across this, I should mention this, I'm researching Lou Gramm because he's my next interview on my Friends of Dan Music podcast. I heard this thing, wow, I really, really like this. I like the energy of it. Obviously a fresh, young Lou Gramm. And I thought, this is pretty killer.
And anything like that, any sort of historical document that, I don't know, are you familiar with the Nuggets set?
Yeah, I think so.
The Nuggets records, they're all this garage rock stuff. Mm-hmm. If you look at the liner notes for all of this garage rock stuff, you start seeing like, oh, there's Rick Derringer. Mm-hmm. Oh, Warren Zevon. Huh. And like you can sort of see it's like seeing Robert Redford on The Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that kind of stuff. Well, on the other show, we were talking about Miami Vice, and there's a lot of people who just pop up in that show, very young, who had great careers later in these small roles, like Jimmy Smits was in the pilot. But that song did not sound like a Foreigner song. No. And that's probably why they didn't pursue it. But boy, that sure sounded like Lou Gramm. So.
It's super funky by Foreigner standards. But if Foreigner had already had 3 albums out, they totally would have released that as their attempt at disco. It would have been their I Was Made for Loving You, right?
All right, now, before we go any further, we keep getting sidetracked, and it's rude. So, Olivia, let's talk about this music thing for a second. First off, how long have you been doing this?
Pretty much all my life. I mean, actually longer than acting, just because my father, I was always around music, and my father is still to this day writing amazing music. He just did another Manfred Mann album, which is really cool, especially since they've all gone off and done their own separate things. Paul Jones.
Your dad is an OG member of that band?
Yeah, he was the lead singer.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
That's great.
Very cool.
So
I get it.
So it's this. There's always been music in my life. It's so funny. I just posted something on Facebook yesterday from somebody who came to a gig that I did at the Knitting Factory in New York several years ago, and he had found an early Rod Stewart song because my father actually wrote Handbags and Glad Rags for Rod Stewart, and but there's another song that he wrote called Little Misunderstood, which I just checked out and hadn't actually heard it. After all this time, I'd heard the song, I just hadn't heard the really early version that Rod Stewart had done. And he'd done it around the time that he did Handbags and Glad Rags, which was on his Atlantic Crossing. I'm
a Rod Stewart fan. I'm with you on all this. Okay.
Another little crossover there that I should mention really quick is that Olivia's dad also wrote Build Me Up Buttercup, which has been a staple of your live set for how long, Rob?
Wow.
Yeah. I play that song all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So, most famous wedding song.
Well, next time you see him, tell him I said, hey, nice work.
Hey, thank you.
So how many records do you have out?
It's hard to say how many records per se. I mean, I've had one that's officially out and another one that wasn't necessarily released, and then just a ton of music, and another one that's in the works. So, and then there's individual songs that I've done for, various soundtracks, which is a really good way to get your music out there. And, just music that I've done with other people, just in terms of collaboration, songs that I've written for other artists. So it's just a question of sort of how you find it.
No, I have a similar kind of thing in my world where it's sort of like, how can I find you? Yeah, I totally get that. So do you play out?
I do, yeah. I'm actually gonna start playing out soon this year. So it's a question. Playing out is really a question for me of finding the right musicians that I jive with, and they're not always available. I guess I'm so sort of attached to certain people that I play with, just in terms of like them as musicians and artists and people, that there's just you actually need less rehearsal.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, but also because you need to really, I think when you play out, you need to kind of, sometimes you can have a ton of stuff going on at the same time. That's how some people do it. For me, I tend to like to just focus on just doing that and nothing else, and take a little bit of a sabbatical from whatever acting gigs I'm doing. But that's really what I'm doing more about this year.
I should probably look at how you're doing that, because I can't do that to save my life. I'm like, but I can't walk away from the thing because I want to go do the thing over there. And then I want to go back.
I wasn't aware you worked on the thing, but that's amazing.
Don't make me.
The thing is a show.
It's also a car.
Well,
Exactly.
it could be any inanimate object that
he's
you
also
want
an
to make.
auto engineer. So talented.
And a dessert topping.
I guess I want to see you play. Is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with said things.
Yeah, and if you ever need somebody to be in your band, I'll do it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
Thom will do it too. We're both super fun and both really good.
Yep, just leave me out in the cold. That's cool.
It's a bit of a commute.
That is where you live, Chris. It is awfully cold.
She did mention the knitting factory in New York, Robbie. I'll show myself out.
Your voice is just so distinctively unique. I'm loving it. It's almost like I know I may meet you one day, but part of me just wants to hear your voice. It's really a unique voice. Have you ever thought of doing voiceovers?
I have, actually.
Car commercials, maybe a Volvo commercial?
Yeah.
They pay very well, you know.
I would take that in a moment, yes. No, I have thought. I did the little lead-up thing to The Greatest Song You've Never Heard, and most of my work has been done with Robbie standing up, engineering and producing me. So I need to do more of that in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know what? That judgmental, I'm feeling one of those too, Chris. How about that?
That's right, baby.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in church, like I'm wanting to rock, because I'm watching you standing up there.
Who, me, bouncing up and down? I know.
Yeah, like you're jogging, and it's infectious.
Yeah. You know that new girlfriend thing that we were talking about, this little bouncing around thing that I do, that's going to get wearisome really fast.
Does she see you doing that a lot of the time?
I'm always moving something.
Well, that's encouraging.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I burn off calories just standing still.
Previously on the Spoon just writes itself, doesn't it, Thom?
Yeah, oh, some of them? Heck yeah. Sure.
I must say also, Rob, you cut a really dashing figure in your 70s businessman suit, which we saw today on Facebook.
What? Oh, yes. Why, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm working on a friend's short film. I'm supposed to be a detective, which is hilarious.
I've always said Robbie should be a dick.
Oh!
Oh, wow. There, you just keep them coming there.
He's amazing.
We call that a...
You're pretty... You are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for 4 in the morning in London, England.
We call that a Colchester ripping.
Yeah. You've been meanie-headed.
Exactly. Yeah, I have to work up a drop for that. Meanie-headed.
Yes, The Spoon is a long-running show with a rich mythos all its own.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's what? December? It's after Christmas.
Yes.
And
it is January, but you were a month off.
And the year is winding down, and many in our culture are quite literally going every day. So who's going to get it next, you think? I mean,
You talking about death?
yes.
Oh, you had to go there.
Oh, okay. So it really was like, so toward the end of the end, we're like, God, it's just like, you know, one of the good things that I think about last year for people that are around our age is all of the sadness that we were supposed to experience as old people, we're having now. So we won't have to have as much of it then because, you know, they cleared all that out already.
Well, yeah, everyone's gone.
It's a very good analogy. That's yeah. I feel like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But what's behind that? Why now? I mean, why do you feel like that's
rampant? Oh no, it's all just coincidental. But
so you're saying it's not going to permeate into 2017?
I think that's going to be a whole other set of just weirdnesses that we, you know, I think by around even March, we're going to be like, oh my God, really? Oh, good Lord, it's happening again.
But
I missed that death year.
But there was something very particular. I mean, I know I risk the calling down the wrath of the thing from on high, but we are 11 days into the new year, and so far, nothing major on that scale. On that note, but
we did have, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
the marvelous Meryl Streep speech at the Golden Globes.
I'm speaking purely
he's talking death.
I'm speaking purely in celebrity death terms. We've had nothing nothing terribly high profile. It's like you know, there's the Factory, and it's like X number of days without an industrial accident. You know, that's 2017. X number of days without a major celebrity death. And people were saying at the end of last year, you know, stop blaming the year. I know everyone wants to anthropomorphize the year and blame the year, but it's you're, you know, being illogical. And like, well, maybe, but there was something very singular about that year. I mean, unless 2017 proves us wrong down the line, but I'm not saying it was purposeful, but it wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, well, it wasn't entirely a coincidence.
No.
It's hard to put that into words cosmologically.
Prove me wrong, children.
Prove
me wrong.
Well, right. I think what happens is the universe. Oh, dude, the universe being like wheels spinning in wheels, you know, and sometimes a couple of wheels like stop, and where they stop just happens to be in a really weird place. And I think that's what happened last year.
I so feel you.
Yeah, you know, I really feel like last year was just like the first year that I had to try antidepressants because I just kind of couldn't handle it anymore.
So yeah, the whole energy of the year was like weird, you know, and so, but it seems like, you know, I had a starter in my car that
that's a good thing.
Like a fire starter?
That every once in a while there was a place in the coil where the magnet was dead, and if it stopped there, the car wouldn't start. So I had to go in there and like sort of jam it a little bit with a screwdriver and you know, so I could move the magnet. And once it made contact again, it would go. But that's kind of what that last year felt like to me. It's like there was a dead spot, and it just sort of went, and we couldn't get past it. And it just kept happening, and everything was like, here it comes.
Another dead spot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that makes sense, right? That's not too stony.
Yeah. It's like a reverse whack-a-mole. Instead of them popping up and you're trying to whack them down, they're like falling down, and you're trying to grab them and pull them back up. And
like,
you
come on, come back here, mole.
Yeah.
I just sort of started to wonder if God was playing a joke on us or something. You know, I was in England when George Michael died, and both Carrie Fisher. I got there. She was when I think I'd gotten off the plane. I think, she was okay. She was in intensive care. But things, you know, transpired when I was there, and like 3 people died during the duration of time that I was there. And it was like literally just like boom, boom, boom. The saddest thing to me was, I understood it, how a mother can't outlive a child, a parent can't outlive a child. It's just nothing. There couldn't be anything more morbid than that.
Yeah, that's got to be terrible.
Yeah, and, so apparently, I think her mom knew, Carrie's mom knew, when she was in intensive care that, it was put out there that she was stable, that she was okay, but that I think her mother might have known that she wasn't actually going to come back.
It's almost like the end of the year accelerated.
Yeah.
What had been going on the year before.
The slope steepened.
Well, like Thom said, anthropomorphizing the year. It's like, how many days we have left? Oh shit, I got a lot more work to get done.
Yeah,
I've been procrastinating, says Death.
No Christmas holiday for Death.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yet, the Carrie Fisher thing. I mean, because it happened over Christmas, the initial thing, and it was this weird sort of like bulwark, like, no, you will not take Carrie.
Yeah.
And so for 2 days, it was like everyone was like, oh, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Here's where we beat the thing back. And I was driving back from San Francisco on the morning of the 27th, where, as far as I knew, everything was going to be all right. And then I walked into the house, looked at my phone, and suddenly there's all these instant messages I have from people going, yeah, I'm so sorry, dude. And like, and then it was just like, close the shades.
Oh, I know, it was so sad. I literally, Star Wars started playing right after I'd found the news, and like she hadn't quite come on yet. It was that scene where she comes and meets Han Solo again, and they haven't seen each other, and there's just this beautiful connection and look in both of their eyes, just like two soulmates, old friends that, such is life.
Olivia, that's because they were boning.
I know they were boning, and I think that's a good thing. I think
not on the set of that movie.
Not that particular one, but they had. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that really until after she passed.
No, they had bone history, as I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a thing. Yeah.
So of all the things last year, that one hit me a little harder than most. That was one of those days where it was like, boy, I simultaneously wish and am so glad I'm not a drinking man. It was one of those kind of days. So.
Yes, I completely understand. And
no, it really was. If you were of a certain age, there was somebody to lose for everybody last year.
So well put.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think if you were, in your 30s, there were people that went that you were like, come on, really?
Yeah.
I have a lot of toddler friends, and none of them are upset at all.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I was actually I was referring to myself as Lieutenant Dan toward the end. I was Gary Sinise in the crow's nest of the boat at the end of Forrest Gump, where the storm is going to sink the ship, and he's like, "Come on, take me, you pussy!" That's what I was doing. Yeah, I was like, "Come on, you son of a bitch! You don't have the balls." And you know what? I was right. Still here.
No, I totally see Rob in that John Belushi short where he's walking by the graveyard of the entire SNL cast, only without the irony. It'll be real life.
Yeah.
Dan, you're being terribly quiet. Are you still with us?
I'm still here. I'm okay with Chris Jackson taking all my airtime. That's why we're such good friends. That's why we love each other so much.
I feel so much better.
My final episode of my other podcast this year was an acknowledgement of all the death. I teamed up with Tony Peters, and we said, let's try and air it last week of December, so in January no one's going to want to hear about it anymore. And we announced the date we were recording it because we knew there was a possibility in those 2 weeks something could happen. We played a Merle Haggard song called If We Make It Through December, for crying out loud. And between conceiving that and airing it, Greg Lake, George Michael, Carrie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds. So there's something in what you guys are saying. This particular year was just like getting punched, pow, 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 pow. It was like, and not to promote, but if people want to listen to that, well, I see Tom's face. Okay, to promote, that was the last episode we did. I don't even want to revisit myself.
Always hustling you.
When we were planning it and recording it, I was just focused on the work. But when I actually was editing it and listening to it, that's when the sadness kind of crept in. Because I was hearing the music of Glenn Frey, David Bowie, Maurice White, Prince. On it went, on it went, on it went. And I thought, And then that's when the emotion kind of sank in that these are people who made a lot of music that meant a lot to me in my life. And the music's still there. That's always a great thing about it when an actor or a musician dies. But yeah, it was just and even we sort of arranged it from sort of youngest to oldest. We started with like Prince and kind of ended with George Martin and people like that. Even so, that 60s to 70s gap, a lot of those people can make it to 80 or 90.
Oh, yeah.
So just something about this year was particularly snaky.
For me, I haven't had that cathartic cry moment yet. And a part of me feels like I'm not going to deserve to have it until until something is done about the turd. So, I mean,
the turd?
Yeah, the turd.
Robbie has gastrointestinal issues, Olivia, and
and far too many sweet potatoes. So there's an orangey sort of.
It's an orange.
It's who I call the Piotus. The president-elect guy. I just I'm gonna have to be on the phone a lot and sending out letters and doing shit like that for at least the next 2 years. And maybe once sort of things shift into some sort of look, I don't want us to live in a lefty world. I just want a little more balance here. And when that happens, maybe then I'll just be like, 4 or 5 days. Everyone's like, Rob, we heard you crying inside your door. We just wanted to know that you're okay. Rob, there'll be that thing.
Are you still standing while you're crying?
On a certain level, though, Rob, being a presidential candidate and being a president are two different things. So hopefully the job will force him to do what you're talking about and stop campaigning and get to work, and we'll see if he can do it or not.
Maybe.
All signs indicate no.
Yeah, I was just listening to the radio on the way home now, and he's still talking about Hillary Clinton's campaign manager and a bunch of stuff that's not even an issue anymore. He's like,
hey, you won, asshole. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So he's got to get past that for sure.
I refer you to the case of Zaphod Beeblebrox. It is the job of the president not to wield power, but to draw attention away from it, to create finely tuned outrage, so the man in the shack, who doesn't even know he has the job of running the universe, can get on with running the universe. But like Rob said, there's a lot of work to do. So,
hence the invention of Twitter. Look over here. Look over here at this tweet while I do something that I don't want you to see.
It's a really, I remember when I was a young man growing up in the 70s, on the news, I would hear, and I never really understood what the word meant at the time because, I was young. But I used to hear the word ethics thrown around all of the time. And whether something was ethical or not. And then in the 80s, I started hearing it less and less. Now, I think it's only brought up as a joke.
Yeah, it's not a concern, that's for sure.
Well, I refer you to Watergate. I think a lot of people lost a lot of confidence in the U.S. government with that incident. I don't think we ever rebounded from it, frankly.
It's an interesting point. Sure.
I think people felt like Dwight Eisenhower was an ethical person. I think they felt like other presidents, they probably thought Kennedy was an ethical person. Once that whole Watergate thing happened in the Vietnam War, people became very cynical.
But isn't it up to us to do the research on these people anyway? Isn't maybe what keeps this whole thing moving along is that there's always somebody checking somebody out and going, I don't think that's cool.
I remember Colin Powell and Schwarzkopf, people like that, generals, they seemed pretty ethical, and then they dipped their toe into politics and just turned and ran. I think there's a lot of stuff we don't see that's really ugly. We see ugly stuff anyways, but I think that when you start to get into that world, it isn't really an environment for an ethical person. That's why we have Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, so we can live out that fantasy on film. But I don't think Jimmy Stewart and that type is people. I don't know if people want a Machiavellian dirty pool player or not, but I think that's kind of the candidates we get.
Well, I think in the same way that laws don't exist for law-abiding people. Laws exist for assholes. I think that whole ideology of it transcends and transmogrifies into the people that are in that industry. It attracts people. Like, I say this all the time. I think every industry attracts its people for very specific reasons. So, like, behind every performer is someone who is way more comfortable with "I love you, ladies and gentlemen," than "I love you." That's part of it. That's part of the appeal for doing it. Behind, I'm sure, behind every brain surgeon, I'm sure there's some sort of raging God complex.
Right.
That's what draws them to it. Psychiatrists can't figure out their own shit, so they're going to try to figure out somebody else's.
It's like psychiatrists are like known for being whack jobs, but know how to help others.
Right. So politicians, same deal. They were the debate club guys in high school that we hated because they were such mealy-mouthed little weenies.
Well, you also have this whole spin control factor where if you're on one side or the other, no matter what happens, you're obligated by your party to cast it in a certain light, even if you don't personally believe in it. Yeah, a lot of people with ethics probably can't stomach that. They go, look, I don't think this, but my party says I got to go out and say it because I can't appear. You know what I mean? That's an issue, too.
Well, and the pressure comes from both sides because there's also, the parties have this weird sort of ideological purity in their heads that can't ever really be met and really honestly has no place in politics because politics, and governing, it's deal making, it's compromise. And ideology, rejects compromise. So when the parties are having these sort of purity tests, you start hearing about rhinos and dinos and people who are suspect because they don't hold to the ideals of whatever. And it's like there's ideals and there's ethics, and then there's being in a goddamn cult. And we've kind of reached that point. It's team sports. We've said it a million times, and it's clearly not an original thought that we came up with. But
there's a machinery in place that will beat you down. Because my experience, as an analogy, working with state workers in Arizona, when the fresh, new, young, gung-ho people come in and want to do a good job and are excited to be there, the old veterans just beat them down. They crush their spirit, make them hate their job, make them hate their life. And you see these people that had the potential beaten down by the system because that's the people that are there just like telling them, well, what are you so happy about? Don't you know that your situation sucks? So I'm saying if this person jumps into the system and realizes that's what it is, bye-bye. So.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's just like podcasting in that way. The circle is complete.
Exactly.
So thank you, everybody, for listening tonight on TMVcafe.com. We're so pleased to have you with us. Nick was here. Jack William Finley was here. War Dog was here. Zombie Zach was here. Beatles_65, who I suspect is also someone we know under another name somewhere else, is here. Commodore Bob is here. Jeff Ellen is here. E.W. Brad Fute is here. And me, the T to the B. If you want to hear more of this, well, there's two places you can hear more of this. We split it off into two separate things. It's kind of like a gestalt entity of podcasting. If you want to hear more of these sort of spoony craziness that we do here, you can go to thespoonradio.com where there are 248, count them. No, don't count them. We don't have time. 248 more episodes of this Michigas that we do. And if you want to hear more of Dan and Olivia together with that particular inimitable chemical sort of thing that they've got going, you can hear them on everyfridaypodcast.com, which is released, like the song says, every Friday. And occasionally you can even hear me chiming in on that program. Thank you guys for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, that was great.
It was fun.
And Olivia, by all means, somehow let's keep in touch. I want to see you play.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes.
I love gigs.
Well, luckily, our outro music is her.
That's right. We're going to go out with one more song from Olivia Dabo from her Not TV album. I would suggest you check it out. It's really quite something. The Spoon says goodnight.
The mail didn't come today. Another lesson gonna happen. the only ones to blame. She's got a box of faded roses and a birthday cake. Only a small mistake, a careless error in a world of silly heartache. I'm a long tall Sally on a dinosaur, yeah. I put my knees to my belly on the kitchen floor. And it's funny how time moves along, yet I can't seem to strum a chord of happiness. Oh, and it moves inside me like a tide. The undercurrent slips and slides me back again. Shoot myself in the foot. I take on everything and everybody's bullshit, but things are still looking good, 'cause the world is my oyster in this neighborhood. There's iron in my veins, yeah, my blood flows slowly through the petrified woods. I'm a long tall Sally